Welcome to the Raw Spotlight podcast, where we feature inspiring leaders in the B2B space and share their unique stories. Let's get started with the show.
Welcome to the Raw Spotlight, the Modern Marketer series, where we dive deep into the experiences and journeys of up-and-coming marketers. In this series, we focus on marketers who are fresh out of school or early into their careers, sharing real-life insights, struggles, and victories to help inspire others on the same path. So whether you're just starting or looking to level up in your marketing career, here you'll find relatable stories, advice, and strategies from fellow young professionals who are already making their mark. So get ready to learn, grow, and connect with the next generation of marketing leaders. So on today's episode of the Modern Marketer series, we're excited to welcome Lynette Williams, a powerhouse in digital marketing. So with a deep passion for brand storytelling, SEO, and mentoring the next generation of marketers, Lynette has built a long-lasting career marked by creativity, data-driven strategies, and also transformative results. Her journey is one of blending analytical precision with a love for human connection, making her a super inspiring leader in the marketing world. So today we'll be discussing her journey, inspiring growth stories, and her approach to her overall career. Lynette, welcome to the show.
Hi, very pumped to be here. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. I'm excited.
Yeah.
So before I dive into any questions, I'll just be giving a quick sponsorship message. So this episode is brought to you by Ready Artwork, where we deliver uniquely tailored B2B digital marketing services to facilitate the long-term growth of your business. At Ready Artwork, we combine data-driven insights with innovative design to help your business thrive in the digital age. So from SEO and digital advertising to web development and email marketing, we have experts who help companies uncover growth in unexplored and extraordinary ways. To learn more, visit readyartwork.com or get a free proposal. Let Ready Artwork discover your full potential. And before diving into any questions with Lynette, I do want to give a big thank you to Celia Hogue, who referred Lynette Williams for today's episode.
Yes, very big shout out to her. We love her.
She was awesome. So feel free to check out her company's website at merkle.com for future insight. Alrighty, so welcome, Lynette. I'm happy to dive into some questions with you today.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so just to get started, obviously you have a lot of inspiring experience in the marketing field. So I really want to get started with foundations and early career experiences for you. So what first drew you to the world of digital marketing, and how did your experiences early in your career shape your approach today?
Yeah, so I came to digital marketing by way of event marketing. So when I was in college, I had a pretty big turnaround when I first got there. Of being like, wow, there are a lot of opportunities to make money on campus, and I would like some of that money. So I really started to do like brand activations and like field manager work and being campus ambassador, brand ambassador at all the things you see pop up on like college campuses. And I really loved that. I went to Florida State, and Tallahassee is a very small, big city, still kind of small. And so it didn't take a lot to get to the top of that, because there weren't that many people who were doing it and stuff. And it was always like, hey, you're really good at this, recruit your friends type of thing. And so it got to a point where I was like doing them all the time. I was doing like events and marketing like in person all the time, and had no real idea what marketing was besides like, hey, I show up to this event, they pay me a really good amount, and sometimes I leave with a really cool swag. And so that was good enough for me. And I was at the time getting a psychology degree, and I don't know why I thought that I would be a good therapist. I was like, I go clinical route, it'll be great. I can't do that. I'll take everybody's problems home with me. And I had a really hard class in psychology where I was questioning everything about what I was majoring in, what I was doing. And I was like, I think I'm just going to tap out. And one of my mentors was a psychology teacher, but I knew in his professional world, he was a marketer. And so went to one of his office hours, and I was like, I hate it here. And he really was talking to me about, okay, well, what do you see happening with this degree? What do you want to do? What do you currently do? All of that stuff. And I explained how happy it made me to do like all the events and how I would literally clear my schedule anytime someone called me to do something. And I really liked the logistics of everything that went into that. And he was like, you don't have to go into psychology just because you have a psychology degree and like you're passionate about that. Like psychology helps marketing like so much more than you think about. And he was like, my background is in psychology and I am literally a CMO somewhere. And I was like, okay, great. Like, could you give me a job? But that really like triggered me to look at the parallels between psychology and marketing and really be able to say, if I understand how the mind works, then I can understand how to market to people in a way that really lives with them and stays with them. And so, because of that happening in school, while I was doing the events, I started to ask more questions of the people who would call me to put on the events. I started to really be like, hey, can I just shadow you while you're putting together the logistics or like while you're on a call to like talk about the outlines and things like that. And that led me to a path of going from brand ambassador to field manager to coordinator to being on the side where I started to talk to the clients. I started to be the person who reaches out to schedule people and to get things together and come up with the ideas with the clients of what type of event do we want to run? When would this best be like held on a campus? What campuses? And from there, moved into their digital marketing role of like, okay, well, how do we hype this up? How do we let the campuses know that things are happening and stuff like that? And really understanding the difference between traditional marketing and like flyering and things like that versus using social media, using text messages, using all of those digital channels to really get people excited about coming to a 4-hour activation that was happening one time on campus or something like that. So really hitting it hard in those like few weeks leading up to an event and really utilizing people's attention to get them there and create almost like a FOMO. So like you just had to be there, right? And like really looking at it from that side. So that's how I got into digital marketing. It came from that love of really just like trying out different brands, trying out different things. And what I realize now is what I loved was connecting with the different audiences. There's so many different audiences on a college campus. And to be able to say that one day I'm doing, an activation for a soda company who like their CTA is something different than I did one for like a jeans company. And their call to action was totally different on campus of what they wanted from people and what they wanted you to do at their activation. And so I think that that was really what pushed me to really get interested in how do we connect with that audience so that they show up. It's not just like, oh, you show up and then an audience shows up and nothing happens in between. Like there's a lot that goes into that back end. And I really fell in love with that. And it's kept me here. I've been, in marketing for, I think this is year 13, 14. And it all started with literally being a brand ambassador and also having a psychology breakdown in college and needing to pivot. But like that love of finding audiences and connecting them with the brands that fit what they're looking for has held through my entire career.
Mm-hmm. And I know that because a lot of what you said reminds me of one point that Celia made in our previous episode, which was advocating for your customer. So it seems like one of the big points that you're making, like especially with your experience with the event marketing, for example, earlier on in your career, it's really stepping outside of that box and thinking like, what's really going to engage this customer to get them to, not a customer, but in this case, like college students, for example, to attend an event. Like there's a lot of touch points before that, right? So
yeah, and you're dealing with like when you deal with younger audiences, it's so hard. And like the older I get in this industry, the more I really think that being able to get in touch with your audience and really truly know what they think and want and feel versus you assuming what they think and want and feel is a very big difference. And so actually being able to get out there and see what would get a college student out of their dorm and to the union, or instead of going back to their apartment after class to come out to something that's either on campus or off campus takes a lot of effort to get them to do that. And especially if you think about like in college, everybody does things in groups. So if the group is like, no, we don't want to go, and people aren't going, right? But on the flip side, if the group is like, oh, hey, this does seem really cool, this does seem like we'll get something out of it, then everyone wants to go. And so it's really a true understanding of like, what's your persona? What's your audience? What's your like all of that stuff? And I think that so many people forget that, like, because it's so like almost elementary in marketing that we forget step one. We go straight into step five and think that we can take off with the best campaign ever. But if you don't pay attention to step one, you can put that campaign out there and no one's going to connect with it. No one's going to see it. No one's going to engage with it because you never touched base with your audience. You never defined your audience so that you even knew who you were speaking to and if you were speaking to them correctly.
Mm-hmm. I totally know what you mean because I've had that thought process before of like, well, it makes sense in my head, but then it doesn't make sense to the people that I'm trying to speak to, for
Yeah.
example. So that's super important. So I'm glad you pointed that out.
Yeah, a lot of people forget that. And it's just like, you'd be shocked how that really does change how someone's engagement is happening on digital channels and even how their like actual like call to actions are happening. Are they getting people to convert on their site, whatever that conversion is, whether it's e-commerce or it's a lead generation website? If you understand your audience and they can feel that you understand them, they will convert without you having to harass them to get them to move down your funnel.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And so I want to go a little bit more into maybe your overall like brand persona, right? Or your personal brand. So I know that, for example, on LinkedIn, you describe yourself as a Beyonce of digital marketing and the Oprah of audience connections. So what do these titles mean to you and how do they reflect your personal brand?
Yeah, I really wanted big shoes to fill for how people think about me and the way that I am in the digital marketing space, right? When we hear those names, you automatically have some connection to it, right? For the most part, I won't say everybody, I won't be that biased, but most people love Beyonce, myself included. And so for me, like there's just such a presence that comes with that. And it's a long lasting career of connecting with people, no matter what the audience's age is, no matter what her age is, we grow together. And we have all of those memories and all of those feelings all the time. She could literally, well, she's done this in the middle of the night, drop something and everybody cling to it. And that's what I want as far as my personal brand, right? Is that it is setting myself up to be a thought leader, setting myself up to be someone who people turn to for information, for like, okay, what's the breakdown on what this actually means, on mentorship and things like that. I'm not dropping any albums in the middle of the night, or ever. But I do really like to be that person who can break things down for my clients, break things down for my team, break things down for my students, so that they understand. And I like to keep that ear to the ground of there's a lot of tools, there's a lot of systems, there's a lot of things that we use in digital marketing that change all the time. I won't get into my vendetta against Meta and the way that I think their engineers wake up every day and are like, let's change something. Let's no morning change something. But like someone has to be able to convey that to a team that, hey, the process that we had 2 weeks ago is no longer the process now. When I'm teaching, I have to be able to, if I'm going to demo something in a platform, if I haven't been in that platform to see that like, oh, that demo has to change, then we all look a little caught off guard when we're in class and things like that, and like stuff moving behind paywalls and things like that. Like you have to be on top of that. And so really getting that like almost persona of me as a digital marketer as someone who really is ahead of that, ahead of the trends and innovation, and bringing that together in a fun way that's enjoyable is really what I want. And then when it comes to, being the Oprah of audiences, connecting audiences, I feel like from a young age, like I was one of those people. My mom watched Oprah every day after school. I saw it. And then, I would be the person like standing in the hallway, like, what are you? And then I'd be on the couch watching it with her. And every day I just come home and watch it with her. And I just feel like the way that she was able to think about all the interviews, all the audiences that have sat in front of Oprah, all the people who have sat in front of her and felt so comfortable sharing their story, and also felt so heard, whether they were on the same side of a story or an issue or a topic or whatever you want to say, they always felt like they were heard, and that they could trust her to like not bring judgment or anything to what they're doing, that she could actually really listen and convey their message to her audience in a way that wouldn't feel like an attack, right? Even if it was controversial or anything like that. And that's what I want to do for audiences. So many companies want to reach out to audiences, want to reach out to all of us, whether that is to get us to buy a product or to get us to sign up for something or get on a sales call or whatever it is, right? But they're not taking the time to understand the audience, to know that this is how I want to be approached. This is how I want to be talked to in an email, in a text message, in a pop-up, all of those things. And so for me to be the middle person who does create that environment where they feel safe and heard and everything like that only helps all the companies that I work for, right? And also it helps good marketing get out there so that it is talking to an audience, so that it's not just like there's a lot of like static out there, and like a lot of things that don't connect with audiences that really deter people. Like I think as marketers, we are bitter and jaded sometimes when it comes to campaigns or like clicking on ads and stuff like that. We're like, I could do this better. I'm not going to click on this. I'm not going to like mess with your engagement rate or like get retargeted or anything like
Yes.
that. And so like I feel good being like I'm cutting down on that static. The things that I put out, I will stand 10 toes down on it and say that this was a good campaign because I know that there are people out there that this campaign will solve a pain point. This campaign will get people to a product that they didn't know existed, but they need that product to help them solve a pain point or to make something more streamlined or something like that, right? And I think that also having Beyonce and Oprah as in general, as like young Black professional, having the two of them as how I identify myself is like very near and dear to me. And that same power that they have with just saying their names, that is what I'm trying to create in this digital marketing industry. And I would say I'm pretty close. I might not be there. I still have some steps to get there, but we've made that path very clear, and started to like get the weight that comes with having such a name and having such a like a a way in the digital marketing world that you have a legacy already. I still got some legacy to create and to leave. I'm still very young. But I've started that already, that people know that not only can you come to me for what's happening, but also audiences are connecting better with campaigns that I am in charge of or that I have looked at or consulted on or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really liked how you dived into Beyonce and Oprah, how that applies to you. I think that having a person like that sort of guide, like a persona, or kind of being like an add-on, not like an add-on, but sort of like just being like Beyonce of this, Oprah of this. I think that gives you a
Yeah.
lot of I think that would give anyone really encouragement and like confidence, right? Because like I know I want to be like this type of way related to this person, right? Or in this case, like you mentioned, how Oprah, she connects with her audiences really well. And Beyonce, like you said, if she drops an album at like 1 o'clock in the morning, right, people are on it, right?
Instagram's broken. Everybody's downloading it. Like, but
Exactly.
people can connect with that, right? A big
Yes.
thing for my personal brand is understanding that very rarely will someone cross the street for your product, for your brand, for anything, even if it is exactly what they need. It's instead, you have to be over there with them. So you can't expect someone, I mean, unless you get to that Beyonce or Oprah status, to cross the street. You have to give them a little bit more, so that they can understand who you are. They can understand, they can find that connection so that they can build that trust to actually want to work with you or to actually want to like reach out to you and things like that. And so really all coming from the top with something that they can recognize, something that they can really like connect with, and they can have their own connotations, right? When I think of like Oprah and Beyonce, I think of all of these wonderful things, but that might be different than what you think of. You might still think of a list of wonderful things, but they might be slightly different because your experiences are different, right? But I
Mhm.
can bring together automatically someone being able to say, wow, if I'm in awe of like Beyonce, right? So someone being the Beyonce of this industry, I know that I will be in awe of them, of their work, of the way that they talk, of the way that they can put together and see things that maybe we missed, right? It just helps build that connection, and it helps them understand that like I'm not telling you to come way over here and do things my way and stuff like that. I'm telling you that I can see you for who you are. I can see your brand, your strategies, all of that for who you are. And I can get you across the street with me to the place where you want to be.
Hmm. I really like how you broke that down, where in terms of, like you said, they're not going to cross the street for you. You have to kind of go over there and guide them, right? Or give them a reason to go with you.
Yeah.
So I know a lot of that has to do with storytelling, and I know we briefly talked about it earlier. about the importance of really understanding your audience, right? So I know storytelling is a really big part of your expertise as a digital marketer. Can you share an example of a brand story that you've crafted which had a significant impact?
Yeah, of course. Storytelling is like, I feel like it's one of the secret sauces to who I am as a marketer because so many people don't understand it. And I used to tell myself and tell everybody else that I was a content creator, I was the content queen. You know, I had really high expectations when I talked about myself. I was the content queen. I was all of these things. I was a copywriter. But really, what it came down to is I could tell a story. I can like really get people to buy into a story because that's what people buy into more than a product. No one wants to feel like they're being sold to. It's way more about a story. And the thing that people forget about a story is our favorite stories we can see ourselves in. It is no different than when we loved fairy tales growing up or even still now or anything like that. You see yourself in the story and that's what connects you to it. It is no different when we're talking about brand stories or anything like that. And the best brands, we see ourselves in their stories. And so I really had the pleasure of like being at the helm of a story being built for one of my previous employers. I'm from Orlando. I was in attractions technology for years and years and years in my career. So the technology behind like theme parks and like water parks, museums, ski hills, all of that fun leisure stuff. I had the pleasure of being in marketing for those type of technologies. Again, it's an Orlando thing. So I wanted theme park tickets. But in doing that, what you forget is the story. A lot of people would just be like, hey, you want people to come to your park. So, like, here's technology that goes for that. That's not a true thing. What you want is people to make really good memories at your park so that not only do they come back, their kids come back as a tradition, their kids come back. Like you want to build that, like you are part of the family, you are part of great memories. And that comes down to storytelling. And so when my last position in attractions technology, that's really what it was. I came into the team as a freelancer. I was just a copywriter. They needed content, and that's what I was there for. But the more I dove in, the more we looked at different aspects of marketing and things like that. And the more it was like, well, I could write you these individual blogs and they'll be great. Like, not to toot my own horn, but like they'll do what you need them to do. But it's such a disconnect from everything else that you have on your website, on all of that stuff, because I'm putting these together with storytelling in mind and I'm understanding where the audience fits into that story so that they can buy into it. And so with that, and with like just analyzing different things so that basically what they were doing and what I was doing for them matched instead of like you could clearly tell that someone else was writing and putting together content than the person who like was doing their website and things like that. They took me from freelance to full time and really let me run wild on what the brand story was, what are the assets that go with it as far as digital marketing. Like their full digital marketing was really in my hands with like some great wonderful managers who are truly wonderful digital marketers who were my mentors at other positions. Like we all came together to this team and they said, we've seen you grow, we've seen what you can do, we trust you, you tell us what needs to be done. And having that freedom to really create the story from scratch and then build everything based off of that story really pushed me to a level of creativity that I've never been at before. And it was so wonderful to be at. But also, we did so much in like even in a year's time where people connected with that brand or really no one knew about that brand to where they were even a year after I started was night and day. Like people actually would come to us and say like, oh, hey, like we were reading your blog or we watched your webinar, we did this and everything. And all of that was coming off of my desk, was coming off of this laptop and me like hopped up on Cherry Coke. Like that's what listening to like pop music, creating stuff like that. They were connecting with that because we did think about it with the story in mind. The thing about storytelling, when I say that you want to see yourself in that story, a lot of brands like they mess up the way that a story is supposed to be told. And what I mean by that is anybody who's gone through like story brand, it's a type of like training as far as like how do you position a company and things like that. It's like a workshop that you can do. I was privy to that very early on in my career. In one of my first like big kid jobs, the leadership team did a story brand workshop and they defined so much about the story and everything. And the biggest thing for me that really clicked and changed the way that I started to write content, the way that I started to market was they said, who's the champion in the story? And every single person said, the brand, the product, the service we offer. That's not the case. It's your audience. They are the champion in the story. And it doesn't matter what you're selling or anything like that. You lead them to the win, but they are the champion. They either solve a pain point for themselves, for their families, for their company. If you're talking about a tech overhaul in an attractions in a theme park, they want to be the person to say, I introduced us to this tech company that now brings us in way more revenue or brings people back time after time or whatever it is. It's not the brand as the champion. You don't get to hold the trophy at the end. You're in a picture, but you're not holding the trophy at the end. And so many people, like that's such a small change of thought process, but so many people don't get that. And that is what, like, when I'm storytelling, that's what I bring. And it shows. So many people connected with the content that I was doing for that company. And so many people saw just the quality of what it was. And all it was putting together a cohesive story where we felt like the audience was the winner and we put them in the driver's seat of we can empathize with what you're going through. Here's how we help you solve it, right? You're going to win at the end. You'll get the reward. You'll get the higher revenue. You'll get the more people coming to your park, but we're just the technology that you suggested that you add in, right? And they felt way better about that because you don't feel sold at. You don't feel like someone's selling to you. You feel like you are making the decision to make something better in the long run, to solve some of your pain points, to smooth out some of the friction that's in your operations or in your strategies, right? Versus being like, buy our product, it's the best. Like, it just doesn't. It's such a like thing, but so many people miss out on that. And that really, like, I'm talking, we redid websites for like that company. I think had 6 blogs that they had written in the 8 years that they had been around. And I think I was writing and doing new content pieces like 5 times a month. New content was going out. We were working with partners, all that stuff. And the amount of engagement we saw was insane. The amount of people who would sign up for webinars, the amount of people who would look at our gated content, the amount of people like we could see forwarding our email and opening links to our content and stuff like that. They were wild numbers because we started to tell a story. And that story was very relatable to all of the operators who are in the back end of attractions and theme parks and things like that. And it really got them off the ground from going from like a small company that no one really knew about, that like no one could tell you what their mission statement was, what they were about, who their audience even was, to there was not a conversation that happened in the attractions tech industry that didn't include like that company. And that was only a year. Like we had more time together and things like that, but we accomplished that in a year, which is such a wild thing to think about. But it all came down to storytelling, honestly. Not all came down to story. You know, your girl was a big part of that, but but it came down to that, right? Is really understanding. We defined personas for each of the industries. Like we did so much work to understand who we're talking to, so that everything we put out felt like we were talking directly to them. You're just having a casual conversation. It's not a sales pitch, right? And that was so different from everybody else in the industry that people wanted to talk to us. They wanted that conversation because it didn't feel pushy. It didn't feel like we were just about the money. You want to get us to sign up for whatever you want us to, and it's not going to help our park out. It's not going to help us get to our goals. It wasn't like that. That's not the story that we put out. And they loved that story. And it's one of, honestly, some of the best storytelling I've ever done, because I was pushed so far of like, well, you can try new things. You can try, like, there's no ceiling on what you can do. And because of that, like I said, like the creativity that came with being able to like craft that story and get it out on all different channels to reach all different industries of tech really did, like, it was some of my best work, I have to say. And it was just wonderful to be able to not only look at that, but then also back it up with the data that matched it to be like, hey, I feel really good about this piece, but also thousands of people a day are clicking on it in a very small niche industry.
Hmm. Right. So I think those were great points. Just to recap, right? I think, like you said, it's a lot of the success part is about stepping outside it's stepping really into the your audience's role, right? Like, what are they thinking? Like you said, having a casual conversation. Because I think a lot of brands, like you said, they're just like, buy now, call us now, and it's like, why should I? Because
Yeah.
they don't feel heard, right? So it's really important to do that, and that really circles back to the storytelling aspect where you're really advocating for whoever you're targeting. So I really like that you mentioned. I think that's a really great point that it's often overlooked, but I think it's so important for marketers to consider so they can really reach audiences effectively.
Yeah, honestly, the best storytelling you can do is to put yourself in the audience's shoes and
Hmm.
then figure out what the why is. Why
Hmm.
should I click on this? What do I get out of it? Why is this more relevant than the ad I saw an hour ago? Those type of things. We're all consumers. At this point, we're all consumers. Whether you're buying the product that you're on the marketing team for or not, you can
Hmm.
still relate to it in a product you do want to purchase or another brand. And so I think that a lot of people forget that. Like, would you want to click on an ad that was just like very vague, didn't talk directly to you or anything like that? No, you wouldn't. So create the ads that you would want to see if it was a like product or a service that was relevant to what you needed, right? And so many
Hmm.
people miss out on that. But that's the best stories that are told. When you think about like your favorite brands, it doesn't matter how expensive something gets or anything like that. Your favorite brand is your favorite brand. We all love Apple. We do. Whether we think it's better than Android and Samsung phones or not, we have a connection to iPhones and to Macs, and to all
Hmm.
the Apple products. And someone could tell me that it is the worst phone ever. There's so many better phones, and it doesn't matter to me. I'm not
Hmm.
taking it in my pocket. It will still be there because I have
Uh-huh.
that connection with the story that Apple has let me like fall in love with, which is I should have this. Like this is
Right.
a little treat for me to be able to have like all these Apple products that connect and like all of this stuff. And it
Hmm.
doesn't matter how expensive it is or anything. It's always something that's just in my mind of I will always have this. I will always be this type. I have a loyalty to them. That's how you build a loyalty, which is what keeps people coming back is that brand loyalty. And it all
Hmm.
starts with if you wouldn't click on your campaign or open your email or anything like that, why would someone else click on it? Right. So I
Hmm.
always push people, whether they are my students or people who I am leading on a team or managing, whatever it might be. I say, what was the last email you opened up? What was the subject line? Why did you open it? Is it because it was your favorite store? Or is it because the subject line was just so catchy to you that you had to click on it? Tell me what made you make that action. What was the last thing that you liked that wasn't from your family or friends on social media? What made you like it? What made you click on it and look at the full video? Right? Because
Hmm.
marketing isn't about like recreating the wheel. It really is not. We've got a wheel, it works. It's about taking things and figuring out how it fits for your brand, your story, your audience, and things like that. Like you can pull inspiration from so many places. And that same feeling that you get as a marketer who gets to see behind the curtain on how campaigns are built, your audience should get when they look at your campaigns, when they haven't seen behind the scenes and stuff like that. And I think a lot of people miss out on that of putting themselves in those shoes of would I open this email? Would
Hmm.
I click on this? And I get it. Like you get stressed out where you're just like, I have to make this many campaigns or I have to make this much creative or whatever. But
Yeah.
even taking that step back for a day, a week, whatever you can manage helps your campaign be that much better to say, who am I trying to reach? Who am I? What do I want them to do? Like I've listed 7 things in this email that they should be doing. That's confusing and that's overwhelming. Like, let's bring it down to one. Like, let's make this as easy from step A to step B as possible because that's what people want. That's what you want. If you're in a busy day and you're going
Hmm.
through emails, you're not going to be like, oh, I have to do these 6 different things, click on all these buttons. I'm not doing that. Like, you want to get to the point as soon as possible. And I think that the best storytellers can put themselves in the shoes of their audience and then give them a very clear, very concise why. And that's what pushes people to do whatever their action is.
Right. And I really liked the example you gave with Apple because I've had family members go on and on about how, well, the Samsung camera is so much better. And I'm like, I don't care because I have a relationship with this brand that's been happening for 10 plus years because their whole, it's really about that attachment, about touching your target audiences, like minds, getting into, like you said, like stepping into their shoes, like at the point where they don't care about the product, say like a product integrity, for example, they care about growing with the brand.
Yep.
So I think that's a great point. And I do remember you mentioning sort of connecting, you have like the creative aspect, right, of problem solving and everything, and then you also have data. So I was wondering, how do you balance creativity with data-driven decision making in your campaigns?
Yeah. The more senior I get in my career, the more there is no world that exists where it is not 50% creativity, 50% data. One hand feeds the other. And the reasoning for that is what tells me whether or not we are connecting with the audience or if we're just building content for our team. And while it's great to build content for the team that the team likes, we feel really good about, if no one is reading that blog, if no one is watching that video, if no one clicked on that ad, if no one opened that email, then what do we do it for? Right. And so having that data to not only back the decisions that I make as an individual, the decisions that I make as a team, but also to show growth, to be able to show off any risk that we take. And I tend to take a lot of risks. I tend to jump on a lot of ledges on some of my campaigns because I know it'll pay off. Being able to show that win and that success is all about that data, right? It's being able to say, I know this is something different that we've never tried before. It's uncharted territory, but look at the engagement we were able to get. Look at the amount of people completing what we wanted them to do, right? So looking at that data really does foster more creativity. And I know we're marketers, we're not mathematicians. Okay. I have a psychology degree and not a marketing degree because I did not want to take accounting and math. I wanted to be on the psychology side with just one statistics class and I crawled through it. I am not a math girly at all, but the way that I am looking at data and dashboards and looking at charts and graphs and year over year comparisons and all of that is intense. And I do it for a reason, because if I tell you, hey, the video you posted yesterday got 100 views in one day, and because of that, the landing page also got 100 clicks, you'd be like, oh my gosh, great. Now, if I tell you the day before you got 10,000 views and 10,000 clicks on the landing page, you no longer feel good about that 100, right? So I can't just give you an isolated number and say, oh, hey, this campaign was a success. What we did, this like leap of faith that we took went really well. I have to be able to build a cohesive picture to say, this is what it was compared to last week, a month ago, a year ago. Here's our marketing initiatives from last year to this year. Here's the changes. Here's how we got more people to get on the website, more people to buy the product or whatever it is. You need that full picture. And so that data is such an integral part of your creative side. It also, from like a leadership standpoint, that is what gets me and keeps me my team. If I'm able to say like, hey, looking at the data, we're doing really, really well, but the team is strapped for time. We can't always try out new things because we don't have the manpower to do so, right? I can lean into that data to say we need another person. We need, whether that's full-time, contract, whatever it is, we need another person, because when we added the last person, look how much more we were able to do. Look how much more content we were able to create. Look how much more we connected with our audience. Look how much more we really were able to build out this marketing machine. Imagine if we added somebody else, right? So that allows me to not only keep myself creative in campaigns, but keep the team growing in the way that it needs to, and also keep my team members where they need to be, right? So that they're not super stressed out because we need an additional head count and I'm not looking at that or anything like that. It really just like, I think that it's hard to be a marketer in this day and age who doesn't understand data. And data is not this like really big monster that we think it is. It is very manageable and very much like, you know what you're looking for. If all of your CTAs are website traffic and sales, then when you're looking at all the data in GA4 or whatever you're using, you're just looking at the charts and the graphs that will give you that information. I know that there's a million things in there. Okay. I also miss the old UA, like Google Analytics, but Like it's far less overwhelming. So you can pinpoint what you're looking at. Unless someone asks you for a different report, you can set up your dashboards in a way that really helps you to not get lost in the data because it really does. If you see that, hey, your shorter videos are really doing way better on YouTube, on your website, on social media, all of that stuff, it makes no sense to spend time and budget and effort in long form videos that aren't getting that much content or that aren't getting that much like engagement. You can change what you're doing to fit what your audience wants versus what the team wants. I might be like, hey, I like our long videos or whatever it is. That's great for me. It's not great for the audience. It's not like good for them. And so just being able to look at that data really does help. And I will say I am working with a client right now who we thought their audience was someone. We had it defined. We spent all of our talking points and everything, really talked to this one persona that we had, this one part of their audience. Mm-hmm. We looked at the annual data on who's actually filling out the forms, who's on the landing page, all that stuff. And we did a very comprehensive deep dive. Guess what? The audience that we were talking to were fifth on the list of the actual people getting to our website, filling out the form, going through the funnel and all of that. And I'm talking deep. It was a deep five. It wasn't a close five. He was a deep five on the list. There were 4 other new audiences that we didn't even know. We weren't even talking to them and they were getting high engagement. So imagine if we talked to them directly and built out those personas and campaigns to fit those, what type of form fills we would get, what type of information we would get. And so it was so eye-opening to be able to see that. And like they are a company that does a lot of year-in data. So we get little engagement things throughout the like quarters and things like that, but we get a lot of data at the end of the year. That completely changes our messaging. It completely changes the campaigns that we were thinking about for next year. All of that totally based off of data. We again have 4 new audiences that we like now have to cultivate language for. We now have to cultivate creative that matches all of them and stuff. Yes, they were already clicking on our site when we weren't talking to them. Now we have to talk to them directly. Now we know that they exist and we have to address them. And that's all based off of data. And now I have 4 new tracks of campaigns that the team has to build out that where we get to try out new things of talking to them. We get to see how can we connect with them and how fast can we move them into, hey, we understand who you are. We understand like your persona and what you're looking for. Let's talk to you directly versus you just fitting in with the way we were talking to the other persona, right? That opens up so many lanes of, and we literally are meeting next week to be like, what do we do with this information? Like, how do we actually, we've already built out the outlines of what we want to do for 2025. And now we have to make a pivot. We can't just ignore them. We can't be like, okay, well, you just keep reading those other people's messaging and stuff like that. Like it really allows us to now push ourselves to say, well, how do we talk to them in a way where we didn't talk to them in this persona, right? But that data really, that's eye-opening. 4 new audiences is 4 new opportunities to get way more people to like get down the funnel and everything. And so like it was very eye-opening to be able to see like that was our bread and butter talking to this one audience. And we had no idea that there were so many other people who wanted to engage with us, who wanted us to realize that they needed information that we had and a product that we have. So like it's not looking at data is something that I did in the early parts of my career because I didn't see the connection. I would never. Today, I would never. I'm in my dashboard at least twice a week, just looking at things because also I can see when something is wrong because I'm in it so much that I can see if something is off and I can catch it, especially in the advertising side. I can catch it before we spend hundreds or thousands of dollars on something. I can see it because I'm in it so much that like I notice any type of dips, any type of increases or anything like that. So I can make those pauses and pivots so that we can maximize the money that we're spending versus just being like, oh, well, it's set it and forget it. I'll come back when it's at the end of the cycle in 6 months or whatever. Like I can see that. And that is just a value add to all the clients that I work with.
Yeah. And especially with, like you said, with advertising and those other services, right? It's like something can change in a day. Like I noticed for ads, it's like, oh, like there's a new update or something might come up where it's like this ad there's like a new policy, right? Or you can look at the data. So I think that's why it's so important, like you said, where you combine both data and creativity, where it's not just one or the other. You can't have like an app, right, that's only focused on aesthetics, right? You also have to have a functional design, right? So
100%.
yeah. And so I do want to go into, I know we talked about sort of like looking at all of that information, but I do want to go into SEO a little bit because I know you have some experience there.
Mhm.
So with SEO being one of your specialties, as we just mentioned, what do you believe are the most overlooked strategies for improving search engine rankings today?
Understanding the audience is number one,
Hmm.
because something that I think that people forget once again is if this is your job and you do this day in and day out, you talk about a product or a brand or a service in the way that your company talks about it. You know who doesn't talk about those things in that way? The audience. They don't use corporate jargon. They don't use, unless you've trained them to recognize certain things being a part of like a slogan or a tagline, they don't talk about it in the same way that you do. Right. And so I think a lot of people forget that. And so they are trying to do SEO and it's not connecting with their audience because they're like, well, I used to work for a company where they had a bunch of products and each product had a very strict brand like name.
Hmm.
You know who didn't care? The audience. They would call it, but like they would have nicknames that made sense because the brand name was two, sometimes four words. And people would be like, I'm not saying all that. Like they would just want to abbreviate it or say the shortest thing. And for a very long time, that company, before I switched over to doing the SEO, they did it by just these are our brand names, all of that stuff. It's a mix of here are brand keywords, and then here is what like our audience refers to us as. And yes, we can train them to start using the brand words more and more, but you're going to miss them if they're searching for you and you refuse to have keywords that match how they talk about your brand or your service or whatever. So a lot of people miss out on that. And also, I'll actually do that was like a bonus one. The two other big ones is people not understanding SEO
Hmm.
and they just focus on paid. They say, hey, you have to have a lot of money to get in front of an audience. And that's not really true. And in fact, so much research, like I don't know if you can tell that I'm an SEO nerd or not, but so much research goes into people trust the organic results more than the paid results. We are too far deep into the digital age. People trust way more what pops up organically than knowing that people can pay to be at the top of the page. It might not be the most helpful, like landing page or whatever. So they know that and they want to go for the organic results that have moved up on the page, whether they understand SEO or not. Those are more trustworthy to them because they know those people haven't paid to be on the page. So their information is probably relevant to what that person is searching for. And so understanding that you don't need to have a big ad budget to really get on the first few pages of Google or any search engine is so, so helpful. And so many people miss out on that, especially like the reason I'm in SEO is because it really does help out small and medium sized businesses. Large businesses, they can have a big ad budget and get on the top of the page using ads. Small and medium businesses don't blow your marketing dollars on all of this advertising and then have nothing for SEO because also SEO helps your advertising. Like Google looks at both to help out both ends. So like that's a big reason why I am like such a proponent of SEO is because it does help out those smaller businesses not need a huge ad budget and people trust what's happening organically more. So
Hmm.
really understanding that it's not all about the ads. Organic is such a powerhouse and it has lasting results, right? Once your campaign is done, it's done. You're no longer on the top of the page. I have set up SEO, done SEO for clients years and years and years ago. I can still search their keywords and I see that they're still in the top five
Hmm.
years later. And I know that they haven't touched their SEO. I know it. And they're still on the top of the first page because
Hmm.
SEO has such a longevity. And I think that so many people miss out on that. Also, the second big thing that's relevant to what's happening right now is Google is changing what they want out of SEO. The biggest search engine globally is no longer Google, it's TikTok, which like happened. Google got dethroned like 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, from being the biggest search engine. And Google doesn't really like being in second place. They never have. They're not very often in second place. So they don't really know what silver medal feels like. And they don't like it. And so the fact that they got dethroned by TikTok, which is supposed to be a like social media platform, it didn't sit well with them. And to know that TikTok is, possibly on its way out in the US, Google is trying to pick up that there will be a gap. If the US loses TikTok, there will be a gap. And people are looking for those short form videos that are super informative. Google wants to step in and take that over. They want to use YouTube Shorts to take away that gap so that now SEO will include YouTube a lot more, which means something that people are overlooking. And I've already started talking to my clients and things like that about that is you have to have an optimized YouTube page. It has to now be optimized for keywords, for descriptions have to have like research keywords in there, your titles, like all of that stuff that you think about for your web page, you now have to think about that for your YouTube channel. Because not only will your website jump up on Google when someone searches those keyword phrases, now they're going to prioritize putting YouTube Shorts on top of that. So that people are still getting that content, which makes sense. Think about it. If I want to ask Google how to tie a tie, it is so much easier for me to see a video of how it's done. That's 45 seconds versus reading a blog that's going to walk me through. I need to see someone do it, right? So the intention is good. I wish we weren't losing TikTok because I've learned so much on it. But that is something that people are missing is that Google has put out statements saying that they've put out things that have said this is on the horizon for our product. This is in our 2025 plan, and this is how we're going to launch it, like all that stuff. And I think a lot of people are like, no, it's pending on if TikTok actually is going to leave the US or not. And for Google, it's not pending. They are going to do it, whether we lose TikTok in the US or not. And so that now becomes the people who optimize their YouTube pages now are going to, it's the same thing when the big rules for mobile changed on SEO and a lot of big companies lost their number one standing. Like for a week, Disney wasn't number one for Disney keywords and theme park keywords because they waited until it rolled out to optimize their page versus people optimize before the rollout date. And it's the same thing with updating your YouTube. If you do it now, by the time it rolls around, that they give us a date of like starting now, it will pull YouTube into the search engine, the SERP, then you will show up first. If you wait until they give you that date and then you start optimizing, you're not going to be at the top for a couple weeks, a couple of months even, which is why it's so important to not overlook that, to not like, we shouldn't be calling Google's bluff on like, oh, you're not going to put YouTube Shorts at the top. They are. They are building that in there. And I've had a lot of conversations with clients about like, this is a huge opportunity for you to really gain traction on moving up on a SERP. If you were like 10 pages deep or something, this is now a huge glowing opportunity, starred, highlighted, and underlined for you to get to page 1 or 2.
True. And that's exactly what we've been telling clients because recently it's like video marketing is where it's at essentially. And that's where they're pulling like for SEO purposes, right? So we think that's super important too. And I'm glad you pointed that out because it's so big, especially with YouTube. And as we wrap up, I do just want to kind of focus on, speaking to the young marketers out there, right? I would like to know, there's a lot of trends that are changing, like we just mentioned with YouTube for SEO, for example. That's a big change that'll be rolling out. What advice or what's like one piece of unconventional advice that you would give a young marketer to stay on top of all these changes and just really stay on top of their overall growth as they emerge into this career?
Yeah. No one is expecting digital marketers to be robots. No one is expecting you to know it all. I don't even know it all, and I don't want to know it all. What I do have is I have resources to lean on to fill in the gaps of stuff that I just don't have time to keep up on, right? Whether that is the network that I've built on LinkedIn, even Instagram, or the mentors that I surround myself with, the things that I look into, like the newsletters that I'm a part of, things like that. I have resources where I don't have to be looking at all of Google's release notes from their latest product release or anything like that, right? I can look on LinkedIn and follow people who are giving us the layman's terms of what's happening in those releases every 2 weeks or every month or however long they're coming out. I can look at, talk to my mentor on, hey, have you tested out these tools in AI? Since that's something that's coming up. Like it is not a one woman show. It is not a one marketer show. It is all about the resources that you have, and everything is a resource. If there is any marketer out there who says that they are not on Google, YouTube, or TikTok multiple times a day looking at how to do something, how to like reach outside the box on creativity or anything like that, I hate to say it, and I hate calling people this, but they are liars. We are all like looking at that for resources all day, every day. No one is expecting you to know it all. And in fact, something that I think that a lot of people who are my students and who I mentor don't understand is you can tell someone you need to go research something. You don't have to, it's almost worse to give a boss or a client a wrong answer instead of saying, you know what? I know a lot of changes came out recently. Let me go double check what best practices are. Let me go look into something to give you an answer because I know it's been a while since I've been in that platform, or it's been a minute since, I've actually confirmed what used to work. And I know like big things typically come out beginning of the year and summer, right? Those are typically when the big platforms in digital marketing release, like change big things. So if you're in between that or anything like that, it's okay to tell someone like, I know that I used to do it this way, but I need a second just to double check versus going off of your gut and just saying something and then having to go back and be like, actually, I was wrong. That was not correct. Which is fine to do, but it is okay to give yourself a little bit of space to look into something or to come back to it. Like, don't be afraid of that. And also don't be afraid to like, I know networking is a big word for Elmo, but we got to be able to network with people so that you can use them as a resource. And I think that a lot of people really think that networking is so hard. It's like talking to people at a mixer, like, and in person about the weather and things like that. And that's not networking. Networking is finding common interests with people and talking to them about those things. Also talking to them about not common interests, right? Like you're still a human. You still want to talk to someone like they're a human. And I think that the next generation of marketers really has to lean into your resources are everything. If you're like, hey, I follow someone or I've heard of like Neil Patel in SEO, follow them on LinkedIn, follow them on Instagram to sign up for a newsletter, things like that. Don't suffer in silence. Don't be so like, oh, I can't talk to them. Like they're like well known here or like they're someone I look up to and everything like that. Like, don't be afraid to connect with them. The worst someone can say is no. And I got to be honest, as someone who a lot of people come to me to ask if I will mentor them or to help them or anything like that, I don't think I've ever said no. I don't think a lot of people have helped me get to where I am in my career, and I will help as many people as need my help get to where they want to be. So like, don't cut yourself off already and not even ever reach out to actually grow your network to have those resources. Because things change all the time and no one is expecting you to keep up with every last thing that changes. They're expecting you to know what resources to lean on when they come to you about something that is a change or something like that. Like, and that's scary for a lot of people. And I get it. I understand. But like, especially since there is so much AI, something that I tell all my students is have ChatGPT, you and ChatGPT sit down, write a nice little message that you can email to people, that you can send them to LinkedIn in a LinkedIn DM when you send them a connection request. Obviously, like take whatever ChatGPT says and make it a little bit more personal. But until you get to a point where you can just off the cuff write a message to someone to ask them, would they be willing to mentor you? You really liked what you heard from them on, an event or a webinar or a podcast or anything like that. That's okay. Use a message that you have tailored to send out to everyone until you get to a point where you can say like, oh, hey, I want to connect with Lynette. Let me write her a message real quick. Chances are they're not going to be like, oh, did they send you the same message? Like, we're not going to compare notes, right? We're going to think that it's a very personal message, and we're going to either let you know we have the bandwidth to take on another person to mentor, or we don't, but maybe here's some resources, right? You can follow us, see what we're posting, all of that stuff. But it's really, if you don't have resources and you're a marketer, like it is so much harder for you. And also it's harder to find growth because if you're so bogged down, like in what you're doing and learning and things like that, you don't have the mental capacity to think about your growth plan and think about where you want to go. And being around like-minded professionals really does help you be able to say like, no, take the 2 hours this month, sometime this month, to figure out what you want to do in the next 6 months, right?
Mhm.
They're going to push you for those things, and it's only for the better. It might sound very stressful, but in the long run, you figured out where you want to go in 6 months, right? And I
Yeah.
just think that those resources are so helpful.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. And I think that advice of your resources are everywhere is really helpful. And whether it's like at Target or Starbucks or online, right? It's everywhere. So I think that's super important for marketers to consider, in their everyday life, just to make sure that they're constantly learning and really picking up from what's around them, because it really is everywhere. It's online, it's in person, and
Yeah.
I think that's super important. And we do, just to close out this episode of the Raw Spotlight, the Modern Marketer with Lynette today. Thank you for being on. Really appreciated having you on and sharing your super valuable insights. Um, yeah, I just want to give you a huge thank you, because I know that I think this will be really helpful advice to young marketing professionals or marketing students. I think you gave, again, a ton of really good advice that I think is very good to reference for anyone just starting out or that even has a few years under their belt already.
Thank
So,
you. It was wonderful to be here and just kind of share
mhm,
like the things that I think are super helpful and that I've seen are helpful.
mhm,
Because even if one person can discover their like passion for digital marketing, like I've done my job, like I can go to bed with a smile on my face. That's all I
uh,
really want. So I
mhm.
love things like this. And thank you so much for making this such a fun environment and such a comfortable environment.
Yeah, and like I said, like I really enjoyed having you on. I really love some of these one-liners, and then also also just the stories, because I know myself, like as someone that's starting out, that's pretty new into this field, right? I think you have a lot of great and inspiring stories. Like even if someone's in a different field right now that's interested in marketing, or is like, I'm maybe not wanting to pursue this field, it's like there are options, right? As you experienced. So
Oh, for sure. Like
yeah.
never, I think that people don't consider freelancing in digital marketing or digital marketing as a side hustle or side job, and like don't count it out.
Mhm.
Because this is something that if you do like that creative side or do like that data side, this is something that will 100% keep your passion going, and you can make this a very lucrative field.
Mhm.
And so there is money to be made, and you don't have to be perfect. I don't think anybody in digital marketing is searching for perfection. They're searching for coachable and flexible and people who are willing to evolve. And that describes a lot of people. So
Mhm.
just in general, letting people know that like I am also approachable. Like I will answer a question. A stranger can add me on LinkedIn and I will go ahead and add them. Like it takes off some of that like scariness of being in digital, especially if this isn't your main field or anything like that. Like just know that you can reach out to people who have been doing this. They are happy to share experience, happy to give advice and stuff like that. So I'm hoping this really helps people.
Of course. Well, thank you, Lynette, and thanks for to all the listeners out there. Thank you so much for tuning in, and remember that your path as a modern marketer is just beginning. So stay inspired and keep pushing forward. Thanks, Lynette.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Raw Spotlight podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.